This free step-by-step video comes to you directly from Haynes, creators of the world's best repair manuals. Fix your car or truck the right way with our accurate and reliable information at your side. You can complete more than 200 jobs on this vehicle when you purchase the complete online manual at Haynes.com.
Water pump replacement. Open the door and pull the hood release lever located just above the driver's side kick panel. Slide the hood safety latch to the left, then raise the hood upwards. Release the hood prop rod from the clip on the right side of the engine compartment and place the prop rod into its slot in the hood. Loosen the cable clamp nut, then disconnect the cable from the negative terminal of the battery. Remove the coolant reservoir mounting bolts and move the reservoir out of the way without disconnecting the coolant hoses. Open the door and apply the handbrake. Chock the rear wheels to prevent the vehicle from rolling. Remove the passenger side front wheel lug nuts. Place a floor jack under the reinforced area of the rocker panel seam. Raise the front of the vehicle and then support it with a jack stand placed under the rocker panel seam. On the opposite side, place a floor jack under one side of the body just in front of the notched area of the rocker panel flange, then support it with a jack stand placed in the notched area. Then remove the front wheel. Remove the inner fender splash shield fasteners, then the shield for access to the drive belt tensioner. Place a wrench on the tensioner pulley center bolt and rotate it counterclockwise until the belt can be removed. Remove the belt and slowly release the tensioner. Squeeze the electrical connector locking tab, then disconnect the electrical connector on the back side of the alternator and move the connector out of the way. Use a small blade screwdriver to release the locking tabs of the plastic cover, then flip back the protective plastic cover for the positive terminal. Remove the battery positive cable nut, then detach the cable from the alternator. Remove the alternator harness bracket bolt, the engine harness bracket bolt, then disconnect the electrical connector to the coolant temperature sensor and move the harness out of the way. Remove the oil dipstick from the tube. Loosen the alternator upper and lower mounting fasteners. Remove the alternator fasteners, then carefully work the alternator out from the lower mounting bracket and guide it out of the engine. It may be necessary to use a small pry bar or screwdriver to free the upper mount of the alternator before it can be removed. Open the door and apply the handbrake. Chock the rear wheels to prevent the vehicle from rolling. Place a floor jack under the reinforced area of the rocker panel seam. Raise the front of the vehicle and then support it with a jack stand placed under the rocker panel seam. On the opposite side, place a floor jack under one side of the body just in front of the notched area of the rocker panel flange, then support it with a jack stand placed in the notched area. Remove the screws from the front and rear of the cover, then use a trim tool to remove the plastic fasteners in the middle of the cover and lower the under engine cover from the vehicle. Place a small section of hose on the radiator drain valve. Move a large container under the radiator drain to catch the coolant. Open the drain fitting. It may be necessary to use a pair of pliers to open it. Allow time for the coolant to drain completely. While the coolant is draining, check the condition of the radiator hoses, heater hoses, and clamps. Replace any damaged clamps or hoses. Once the system has drained completely, close the valve and remove the hose from the drain, then remove the drain pan. Remove the drive belt tensioner bolt and tensioner. Remove the wiring harness bracket fastener, then move the harness out of the way. Remove the water pump mounting bolts. Place a drain pan under the water pump, then remove the water pump. Remove the water pump gasket. Clean the sealing surfaces of all gasket material on the block. Wipe the mating surfaces with a rag saturated with lacquer thinner or acetone. Clean the sealing surfaces of all gasket material on the water pump. Wipe the mating surfaces with a rag saturated with lacquer thinner or acetone. Verify the gasket correctly fits the pump and all mounting holes are open. Install the water pump and gasket onto the engine using at least 2 of the bolts to make sure the gasket is properly aligned. Install the remaining water pump bolts in their correct positions and tighten all of the bolts, a little at a time, in a crisscross fashion. Tighten all the water pump mounting bolts in a crisscross pattern to the specified torque settings. Install the drive belt tensioner, aligning the tab on the back of the tensioner with the hole in the housing, and tighten the mounting bolt to the specified torque setting. Install the wiring harness bracket, then tighten the fastener securely. Install the alternator and maneuver it to align the upper mounting holes and the alternator top with the bracket. This may take some wiggling or possibly even a little force to align the alternator with the bracket. Note, it may be necessary to press the inserts on the alternator outward to make enough clearance for the alternator to slide into the bracket. This can be done using a small hammer to tap the insert outwards. Install the alternator mounting bolts and tighten them by hand at this time. Tighten the alternator mounting bolts to the specified torque setting. Connect the coolant temperature sensor electrical connector, then install the harness bracket bolts to the engine and alternator and tighten them securely. Move the coolant recovery bottle out of the way, then connect the battery positive cable to the alternator and install the nut. Connect the harness electrical connector to the alternator, making sure it clicks into place. An audible click can be heard when the safety lock connector is locked into place. Tighten the nut securely, then secure the protective plastic cover over the positive terminal. Reinsert the dipstick into the tube. Starting from above, install the drive belt over the pulleys. Working from below, slip the drive belt over the lower pulleys, then rotate the tensioner and make sure the belt fits properly into all of the pulley grooves. It must be completely engaged before allowing the tensioner to rotate back into place and removing the wrench. Reinstall the inner fender splash shield. Place the under-engine cover onto the vehicle and align the fastener openings, installing one of the fasteners to hold the cover in place. Then install the remaining fasteners. Tighten fasteners securely. Raise one side of the vehicle at a time, remove the jack stands, and lower the front of the vehicle to the ground. Install the wheels and tighten the lug nuts by hand. Raise one side of the vehicle at a time, remove the jack stands, and lower the front of the vehicle to the ground. Tighten the wheel lug nuts to the specified torque setting. Reinstall the front wheel hubcap, making sure it's fully seated against the rim. Reinstall the coolant reservoir and tighten the mounting bolts securely. Connect the negative cable to the negative terminal of the battery. Tighten the cable nut securely. Unscrew the expansion tank cap. Place a funnel into the expansion tank opening, then slowly add the correct type of new coolant to the coolant reservoir until the level is at the full mark. Install the expansion tank cap and tighten it securely. Start and run the engine outside or in a well-ventilated garage. Turn the heater control knob to the max heat position. Allow the engine to idle for 1 minute, then increase the RPMs to 2500 for 30 seconds. Turn the engine off and let it cool for 1 minute. While the engine is still sufficiently cool, unscrew the expansion tank cap and top up the coolant reservoir with coolant until the level is slightly below the full low mark. Install the expansion tank cap and tighten it securely. Start and run the engine again until it reaches normal operating temperature. The thermostat will open and the upper radiator hose will become hot. The fans will cycle on and then off. Rev the engine to 2500 RPM for 30 seconds, then bring the engine to idle for 30 seconds. Turn the engine off and let it cool completely. Open the cap from the coolant reservoir and add more coolant mixture to bring the level slightly above the full low mark with the engine cool. Reinstall the expansion tank cap and tighten it securely. Start and run the engine in a well-ventilated area. Turn the heater knob to max and make sure that hot air comes from the heating ducts. This is a good indication that all air has been purged from the cooling system. Check for leaks around the fasteners and mating surface of the new water pump. Retorque if necessary. Keep a close watch on the coolant level during the next few miles of driving to check for any coolant leaks. Add more coolant as necessary. Reinstall the under-engine cover. Install the front wheel lug nuts, then lower the vehicle to the ground and tighten the lug nuts to spec. When the battery has been disconnected and reconnected, the vehicle may experience abnormal driving symptoms while the computer relearns its adaptive strategy. The vehicle may need to be driven 10 miles or more to regain smooth operation. Certain other convenience functions may also need reprogramming.